Relisha Rudd was last seen in Washington D.C. in March of 2014. So what happened to her and where is she now? What is up, everyone? Welcome back to GrayDays TV, and today I'm going to be talking about the disappearance of a little girl named Relisha Rudd. Relisha Rudd was born October 29, 2005 in Washington, D.C. And Relisha was born a year and a half after her mother had signed herself out of the foster care system on her 18th birthday. Relisha's father, Irving Rudd, was 16 years older than her mother and had spent some time in prison for the 1992 death of his daughter. And the couple split up not too long after Shamika gave birth to the first of her 3 sons. And a man named Antonio Wheeler is actually the father of the youngest 2 sons. And unfortunately, the 4 children's lives quickly began to mirror the mother's life as far as the childhood they were brought up in, which was extremely chaotic. Social workers actually investigated Shamika Young on 3 different occasions for neglect and possible abuse of her children, including reports of injuries to Relisha and one of her brothers. And she also faced allegations that the children were living in squalor and weren't getting enough to eat. And just like their mother had to do in her childhood, the children moved from apartment to apartment and never really had a place that they could just sit there and call their own. And they eventually ended up living in a shelter for homeless families at the old DC General Hospital. And it was actually the largest shelter in the district, housing hundreds of families and as much as 600 children before it was closed down. And while Relisha, her 3 brothers, and her mother were staying at the homeless shelter, they befriended a 51-year-old man named Kahlil Malik Tatum, who worked at the shelter as a janitor. And he offered gifts to Relisha, including a tablet and a manicure, and he actually spent some time alone with Relisha as well. And Relisha became so comfortable with him that she reportedly ended up calling him her godfather. But Relisha wasn't the only child who he interacted with. It's actually reported that Tatum interacted with a lot of the other little girls that lived in that shelter, but he tended to stay away from the little boys. And for me in this chair now, reading this, it does seem a little suspicious that this older man seemed to only want to spend time and play around with the little girls, and he sort of avoided the little boys. That's a red flag for me, at least. I just see it as a little off-putting, but I guess no one at the time saw it as a problem, even though the shelter had a strict no fraternization policy with their workers. And the shelter was actually supposed to fire anyone who did break that policy, but unfortunately for Relisha, either the shelter didn't know about it or they just decided not to fire him for breaking the rules. So as time went by and this relationship continued to go on, at some point in February, Shamika's mother felt so comfortable with Tatum that allegedly she asked Tatum to take care of Relisha. Now, many people speculate her reason for doing so being that she wanted a better life for Relisha. She saw a man that she trusted to take care of her daughter and give her a better life than she had, because she also was in the foster care system for her entire life, basically. So she saw a man who she thought could take care of her daughter and give her a better life, and she gave her daughter to him. And after looking into what she went through as a child, going from house to house and all things of that nature, I do understand her decision. But unfortunately, the person she trusted to take care of her daughter shouldn't have been trusted to take care of her daughter. So a few weeks later, on March 13th of 2014, a counselor at Payne Elementary, the school that Relisha went to, wrote a referral to the DC Child and Family Service Agency, noting Relisha's many absences from school. And at that point, she had missed over 30 days of school, but a lot of those absences were excused because Relisha's mother told officials that her daughter was under the care of Dr. Tatum. And it wasn't until a couple days later, on March 19th, when a social worker tried to get in contact with Tatum and set up an appointment, that they figured out something might be wrong. So after the social worker set up an appointment and Tatum didn't go to that appointment, they did a little digging and they figured out that he not only wasn't a doctor, he was a janitor. So they immediately called the child abuse hotline and the police. And when the authorities asked Shamika where her daughter was, Young stated Relisha and Dr. Tatum were at a medical conference in the Atlanta, Georgia area. She said they left March 8th and she didn't know when they would be back, but that she talked to her as recently as March 17th. So of course, after hearing this, authorities call Tatum, and all their calls go directly to voicemail. And one of Shamika's family members went as far as to go to the apartment where they thought Tatum stayed to look for Relisha, but she wasn't there. And Young still didn't want to file a police report, stating that she felt Relisha was safe. But DC police did start a missing person investigation, stating that they felt otherwise. And a few days later, on March 20th of 2014, Prince George's County Police also received a request to help the DC police find Relisha. So through some investigation, police learned that Tatum might be driving a maroon 2007 Chevrolet Trailblazer with a Washington Redskin emblem on the back window, which police say they saw parked outside of room 132 of the Red Roof Inn, where they believed Tatum was staying. And when police got inside the room, they found Andrea Tatum, Khalil Tatum's wife, lying face down on the bed, shot once in her head. So at that moment, Tatum was already wanted on a charge of auto theft, but after they found his wife's body, they also charged him with murder. So at this point, Relisha's disappearance began to make the news, and on March 22nd of 2014, relatives and friends of Relisha held a vigil for her outside of the homeless shelter where she lived. And on March 25th, the FBI released a video that showed Tatum and Relisha in the Holiday Inn that was taken on February 26th. They also posted a $25,000 reward for the return of Relisha, and police in Prince George also posted a $20,000 reward for any information that led to the arrest of Tatum. Police also learned that on March 1st, Tatum bought a box of 42-gallon trash bags and some lime, which, like I said in the Two Phil John Doe video, can be used to speed up the decomposition of a body. And once police learned that, they quickly believed that they were probably looking for a body and not Relisha alive. And at this point, the last confirmed sighting of Relisha Rudd alive was on March 1st, although there were some reports that Relisha Rudd was at school on March 5th and March 7th. But on March 31st, police found Tatum's body at Kenilworth Park and Aquatic Gardens, and it was discovered that he had shot himself with the same gun he killed his wife with. But there were still no signs of Relisha. And although police did initially search the park and the surrounding area for Relisha, they stopped the search at the park a few days later, stating that they found no sign of Relisha there. So about a week later, on April 4th, police released a video of a man getting off an escalator, stating that he was a person of interest. And on April 6th, family members of Relisha came forward and gave more information on how they felt Relisha felt about the Tatum situation. The family member said Relisha wanted out of the homeless shelter so desperately that she would fake asthma attacks to stay at their homes. And adults who were close to her described her as arriving with filthy clothes, dirty hair, and an empty stomach. And they said she often didn't want to leave. Now, the search for Relisha is still ongoing, and the last article I could find stated that the police searched the tunnels that were located under the homeless shelter for Relisha, but they didn't find anything. So after this case became national news, lawmakers and the public alike criticized the CFSA for failing to act sooner on Relisha's absences from school and not taking her and her brothers away from that horrible environment that they were in. And the CFA's rebuttal is that they were lied to and they didn't really know the severity of the situation because of the lies they were being told. But you would think that they'd be able to figure out that Dr. Tatum wasn't actually a real doctor. And I know hindsight is 2020, and when we're looking back on cases like this, it's hard to believe that they really were doing their job if they weren't able to figure out something that simple. But I don't work in that environment. I don't know. They probably get a million different cases that they have to look at, but it's still very sad that someone might have overlooked something, and because of that, a little girl's life ended up in a completely different situation than it could have been in. Now, like I mentioned earlier, Relisha's mother, Shamika, was also a product of the foster care system, and she lived a similar life to her daughter. Her father was not part of her life, and her mother was suffering from substance abuse issues. Something else I want to point out is that Relisha's mother was also diagnosed with a mild mental disability, and she also spent time in a psychiatric treatment facility at a young age. But even with all that being said, of course in this situation, people are going to point fingers at the mother and blame her for the decisions she made that affected her daughter. And at some point, Shamika Young was investigated by a grand jury for possible obstruction of justice charges because of her inconsistent statements about her daughter's whereabouts. But in the end, no indictment was issued. So what do I think happened to Relisha? There are a couple theories. The first is that she was taken and sold into child sex trafficking or something along those lines. That's always going to be something that is possible, and it's hard to really find proof that something like that could happen, but it's something that can happen. The second theory is that Relisha's mother, Shamika, actually sold her to Tatum. Now, this could also be likely, but there's no real proof that anything like that happened. And I personally feel like the only reason Relisha was with Tatum is because Relisha's mother, Shamika, honestly felt that her daughter probably had a chance at a better life if she lived with him. Do I think that was a good decision? No, it was definitely not a good decision, but I understand her reasoning for thinking that that might be a good decision. Unfortunately, you can't really trust people that much in this world, especially someone you haven't known for that long. But I don't think that she sold her daughter to him. I think it's more likely that she honestly just gave her daughter to him, thinking that he could provide her a better life. And he took advantage of that and did something else. I'm not really sure what Tatum did to Relisha, but I do believe that it's very likely that Relisha is not alive anymore. Now, although people do think he stole a vehicle, and I couldn't find any information of them recovering that vehicle that they thought he stole, but I honestly believe that he probably took Relisha to that park, and that is where he killed her, and she is buried somewhere in that park. From the information that I read, there are some spots in that park where you could hide a body and not find it. And a lot of theories are pointing to the fact that Kahlil Tatum probably killed himself the same day he killed his wife, and that it just took a week for people to find his body, which, again, I'm not really sure about the details of that or not. But if that's true, I do believe that Relisha is probably somewhere in that park. The best case scenario is that she is alive, but if she is alive, where would she be? Who is she with? It's so unfortunate that this little girl really didn't have a chance at life. Her mother put her trust in someone who she shouldn't have put her trust in, and because of that, this little girl may not be alive today, which is extremely sad. But let me know what you guys think about this. Do you think Relisha is alive? Do you have any theories on what might have happened to her? I'd love to hear it. So leave those comments in the comment section down below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you aren't already, but that is the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys continue to have a great day, great week, great month, great year. And I will catch you next video.